And we're live. Welcome, Rebels. You've made it to week 11 of the 10-week course. That's right, bonus level unlocked. And honestly, no one's even noticed we snuck in an extra week.
I don't think they did, Alan.
It's a bit like Netflix, just when you think the season's over, boom, surprise episode.
And what an episode this is. We've been promising this one for a good while now. And tonight it's finally here. Drawdown, Demystified. How to turn your pension into income without running out of money.
Now, let's be real. This stuff is tricky. We've spent a lot of this week confused learning all this stuff. I am 12 years off being able to access my SIP. Katie's even further. So we've been learning all this week, and it's had us scratching our heads too. But here's the thing. Quite often you have to go through confusion to get to clarity.
So if you feel confused tonight, that's completely okay. Just breathe. Maybe you need to come back, watch the replay. Maybe if you're already watching this on catch up, you need to watch it again. Just write it out, draw diagrams, scribble on your bathroom mirror if you need to, but you'll get there.
Because this is worth it. You've worked so hard to build your freedom fund, your pension pot, your ISA, your investments. Now it's time to learn how to get that freedom fund working for you so that you can have the retirement you dreamed of.
And this is exciting stuff. We're talking about turning your hard-earned savings into freedom, security, and fun. But let's be clear, this is an introduction to the topic because it's so complex. There's so much to dive into. So we're going to introduce the concepts, the ideas, and the strategies tonight.
And we're learning right alongside you. Seriously, we've been geeking out all week and we still have questions. That's why we've brought in someone very special to help guide us through tonight.
Please give a massive rebel welcome to John Buston, the man, the myth, the legend. He discovered financial independence back in 2020, realized he actually was already financially independent through what he'd been doing. And then he's been spending 5 years planning and executing his retirement. He knows this stuff inside out.
He's managed a full range of accounts, DB pensions, DC pensions, ISAs, taxable account, and he's created some incredible tools, guides on efficiency, pension, bridging, drawdown, and even flowcharts.
Oh, I like flowcharts.
For everyone's different tax positions.
Let's be honest, we're probably going to say something wrong tonight, and John will be there to correct us, and that's okay, because that's how we all learn.
Basically, if you want to know how to make your money last, John is the man. We're so lucky to have him here tonight.
So let's go, Rebels. Grab your notebooks, grab your calculators. Let's dive into Drawdown Demystified.
Welcome, Mr. John Buston.
Good evening. Great to be here.
Good to meet you.
He said great to be here, not good to meet you. We have chatted before.
Several times every day for a week.
Yeah. You can't get rid of us.
Yeah, it's been intense.
John's like, I'm glad this is here now. So here's the session, how to live off your money in retirement with John. And John, tell us why this first image is here.
So I just Googled, I just went to Copilot and said, what's living your best life? And it came up with this image. And I thought this was quite a good image for what I wanted. So I just put it in the slide deck.
Love it.
Yeah, the whole purpose of this session is to work out how to use that money that you've been building up to facilitate the life you want, right? Like the money and the pensions and the things, they're all just tools for us to be able to live the lives we want.
And we immediately thought of this photo, which felt very similar to the last one. So we're like, we have nearly nailed it. Now, don't expect to be fluent on day one. If you get confused, relax. Read the confused article and then keep going and come back to it.
And this is definitely not an opportunity to compare your pineapples. We're going to be talking about a few different scenarios and situations. We're all different. We've all got different amounts. We all want to live off different amounts in retirement. So yeah, don't be doing that.
And this definitely builds on Rebel Finance School. So if you ever come to a term you don't know, this is building straight on top of the investing weeks, the sequence of returns weeks and more. And this is a very UK specific session.
So hello Kiwis that have tuned in at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. And just to warn you, this is completely UK focused.
We love you and we think you're slightly crazy for getting up. Ruth the Happy Saver, you're mad. Okay, the disclaimer. This is not financial advice. We're not regulated, even John. We're not trained financial advisors. Even John. We're never going to try and sell you any investments. Even John. You make your own decisions. We're sharing our opinions and ideas. Rules change. This is recorded in August 2025. These ideas may continue to work for us or even John. You are 100% responsible for your financial future, and there are no guarantees here except the money back guarantee. If you don't like the course, please speak to John for a refund. Investments will go up and down. Okay, what's coming up tonight, Katie?
So we're going to look at retirement spending. How much might you actually end up spending in retirement? Then we're going to do a little bit on the 4% rule and sequence of returns risk.
Then we have this thing about longevity risk. You might live a long time.
Then we're going to do bridging, which is not a yoga term, but more of a money term. That was a little yoga joke there. Do you think anyone got it?
Tax-efficient withdrawals, how to get money out of your DC pensions and the different options, and then building your own personalized plan. So that's what we're doing tonight. So if you want to take a photo of that, you'll know exactly where you are in the process, and we'll keep coming back to this. So first one, retirement spending. Let's have a look at that. How much are you going to spend in retirement? And we kind of have 3 different ways for you to plan your retirement spending. Number 1, you can base it on your current spending if you're not planning on changing your life that drastically. Number 2, you can have a look at the average spending figures for people in retirement. Or number 3, a personalized budget for retirement.
So we're going to go into what each of those mean. So the current spending, this is where, hopefully you've been doing Rebel Finance School, meaning that you will have been tracking your spending at least for a few months. So if you're going to have a similar lifestyle in retirement as you do now, then you can base your predicted spending on your current spending.
You may or may not have a mortgage. Your kids may grow up and not need you to support them at some stage. You may or may not downsize. You might have some more holidays, but the current spending might give you a good basis for what you need from there.
You might even have less holidays because you'll be a bit more chilled and not feel like you have to.
Well, actually, long holidays cost less than
That's true.
Quick holidays, which is you'll love it. John, what's number 2?
So number 2 is average spending in retirement as determined by independent research by Loughborough University. So they do an annual survey or investigation into what spending is for 3 different personas of people, and for singles and for couples. So for sort of a minimum, you can live a life just about. Then they have this 13,500 for a single person and 22 grand for a couple. And then we get on to the persona of somebody living the average lifestyle in retirement, although I think a lot of people think it's probably a little bit above average, but of around about 32 grand for a single person and 44 for a couple. Now, if you look at these numbers, these are around about the average UK family, household income figures. And if you think about that, well, that means those people on average would have a mortgage and kids. So these numbers are perhaps a little bit high. A lot of people in the fire community think these numbers are a bit high for average, as it were, but they're there for you, and you can go and look at those details. And then we get on to what's living at large. So living at large is 44 grand for a single person and 61k for a couple. Now these are all assuming you're on your own house. You don't have any rent to pay. You don't have any mortgage to pay. And these are the outside London figures. There are some more figures for people in London, which are a bit higher, which you can go and see on their website. And finally, you can see if you get a full new state pension, then if you're a single person and you haven't got a pension, you're in a bit of a pickle because you are living below what they consider the minimum. Whereas if you're a couple, at least you can have a reasonable basic lifestyle. And you're probably over halfway there towards what they consider an average lifestyle, a moderate lifestyle.
Thank you, John.
So we've put in what the new full state pension is, which is about 12 grand a year. And people at this point will always be, yeah, but what if the state pension doesn't exist when I get to retire, or is it going to change? Or are they going to change the amount? Like, who knows? It's up to you if you choose to rely on it. For the purposes of today, we're going to assume it continues to exist in the current form.
Yes.
Because what else are you going to do?
You can have a look at more of the research if you would like to there, but that is one way to do it, is to look at the averages. And that brings us on to the third way, is you could actually create a personalized budget. So if you expect your lifestyle to be different in retirement, like you're going to do something different, like move to a different country or live on a narrow boat or make a big purchase, or maybe you're going to build a Lego city and you need 50 grand extra in your first year to be able to do that. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, but you can build a personalized budget that may or may not reduce those figures for you. And you've got to remember, averages are averages, and you can build your own plan.
What's this Lego city one about?
Yep, that's a secret. So those are the three ways you can plan your retirement spending, and we have a slight different way of looking at it as well with the types of spending.
Okay, so
for John.
So if you analyze your spending, you'll probably, if you're a nerd like me, you'll break down your spending into things that you have to spend, things that you want to spend, and sort of things that you have to spend occasionally. So what I've done is I've taken my baseline expenses, I've itemized what those are, everything you have to spend, food, all your utilities, your insurance, your health, and then you have your discretionary spend like your holidays, eating out, socializing, alcohol, all those sorts of things, of which, you can make informed choices about where you go on holiday, how much you eat out, all those sorts of things. And then you have those horrible long-term expenses that you have to account for every year, but you only ever spend every few years. Like you get a new car every 5-10 years, whatever it is. So you have to put away like £2,000 a year on average for that, or whatever it is. And the same for buying a new kitchen every 15 years, new bathroom, boiler, all those sorts of things, all your appliances, white goods, and your electronic devices, furnishing, all of those things add up. And you need an annual contribution to your expenses, even though you only spend it every few years.
Which kind of brings us on to this, like allowing for long-term expenses, because when you retire, it doesn't mean you stop doing things. And we had this thought of not entering retirement needing a new car or some big purchase. Can you tell us about that, John?
Yeah, so we're just saying that if you're going to go into retirement, you don't want to be having higher than normal expenses in the first few years, because that's when sequence risk is really bad. So you want to either know that you're a long way from needing to do anything major. I mean, you can't avoid some of them, some just happen, but you may, if it's planned, like a new kitchen, new bathroom, new car, then either get it out of the way now or make sure you can defer it quite some time into the future.
Love it. And then you can allow for it in your annual spending. And then to give you a rough guide, most people say 1% of the value of your home for maintenance. And that's definitely a reason why larger homes are more expensive to upkeep. And if we were to visualize what John said about spending, let's say you wanted to retire around 57, make sure your big purchases are done before that, or you defer them till after sequence of return risk. Because if you defer them to afterwards, hopefully your portfolio has grown so much that sequence of returns risk has gone, and then the purchases are a lot smaller percentage of your numbers.
And if you're not sure what this sequence of returns risk thing is, we're about to come onto it, and we talked about it in week 10 of Rebel Finance School.
Exactly. Okay, so that's a little bit about retirement spending. Now we're going to have a quick look at the 4% rule stuff. And we had this idea, which has been covered in the earlier weeks, that you live off 4% of your freedom fund, inflation adjusted, forever. Easy, right?
Easy peasy. Off you go. Why are we doing this session?
Why are we doing this? And then we stole John's homework. Here's a chart version that John helped us create. So if you have your initial freedom fund and your 30-year retirement period, these are the possible outcomes. So you might end up with a shed load of cash. You might end up with a reasonable amount of cash, or in a very small percentage of chances, you end up with not much at all. So at the very top of this, you end up the richest corpse in the graveyard, which is like not what we want. And if you're at the very bottom of this, you end up broke for years. And that's basically all the work we do is to try and avoid these few bits at the bottom.
Yeah, so it's like all this work we're doing to think about all the risks that you might face and putting off these bigger purchases. A lot of the stuff we're talking about today is to avoid those few very unlucky scenarios.
So, John, tell us about your thoughts about the spending and how it works and the 4% rule.
So, I mean, the thing is, the 4% rule is you start with a fixed amount and you inflation adjust it every year. So, do you do that now? Do you spend exactly the same amount every year? Have you always done that? Have you spent exactly the same amount for your entire working career? No. So you've probably adjusted it depending on what you had available and on some priorities that you had. So you vary it. It will be a variable thing. And you'll feel it. If the market drops, you'll want to spend less. You can't help yourself. You will want to spend a little bit less. So that sort of starts to take care of itself, but it's not as simple as that, because you do potentially, if the market drops and it stays low for a long time, you may have to flex for a very long time. So you don't want to be just doing the flexing. You want to be using every possible tool that you can to stay out of that zone. Because say if you have to flex down for 10 years, I mean, you're spending less than you ever planned to for 10 years. That's not good. So,
Right.
you want to be having all the tools available to you. And people go, but wait a minute, the market returns 9% a year and 7% after inflation. Why can't I just take 7% out every year? Well, yeah, because of the sequence of returns risk. It matters what order these things come in.
Yeah, because it doesn't just march on, up 9-10% a year, does it? That's the average over the long term.
Yeah.
So we'll come on to talk about sequence of returns risk. And I think it's worth acknowledging here, we had Bill Bengen come on in week 9 of the course, and he's saying like 4% is extremely safe. So, it's up to you what percentage you use. For the purposes of today, we're going to talk mostly about 4%, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's important as well that you think about this, that probably half the people could have retired on more than 6%, but you don't know that until about 10 years in. So that's the problem that we have.
We'll all get out our crystal balls.
Well, I think the thing is if you prepare for the worst, go through it, and you'll probably be very abundant later on, and that's okay. Because in most situations, people end up with doing really well. So yeah, let's keep moving on to sequence of returns risk. So we have to talk about this a little bit as we go, because it's such a big part of planning as you go through.
Because most of the stuff we're talking about today is to avoid that. So you might be thinking, like, what is this thing, particularly if you haven't done Rebel Finance School this year, because we have talked about that this year, but maybe you need a little refresher. So what is sequence of returns risk, Alan?
So sequence of returns risk, basically sequence means order. Returns is like how much you're getting from the stock market, and the risk is you get bad returns at the start when you retire. So as you retire, if it goes up, you're all good. If it goes down, that's not good. That's the basic summary of what sequence of returns risk is. We're going to call it SORR for the rest of the presentation because it makes it nice and shorthand. And last week, in week 10, we gave you a toolkit for dealing with it, which includes flexible spending, flexible earning, flexible retirement dates, and your asset allocation. And if you missed that one, like week 10 was completely revamped again to be even better. Now, John gave us some additional tools, which we are very excited to share with you. So these are additional ways to protect yourself against sequence of returns risk, which we've got the option to take your DB pension earlier if you have one. This idea of kicking tax down the road, and taking extra free money in retirement, which we did not understand, but we are super inspired to do.
I would happily take some free money.
Me too. Now, John, tell us about the option to take the DB pension early.
Just let me get to the slide. Yeah, so if you are on your way up to your DB pension, you're in the home straight, the 10 years before, usually your DB pension, quite often you will have the option of bringing a DB pension forward to, if you want to. Now, usually that comes with something like a 4 to 4.5% reduction in your pension per year. You take it forward. So, there's a bit of a trade-off going on, but you do often find bringing it forward would reduce the amount of overall invested pot you need by a very small amount. But it also, what it does, probably, can we move on the slide a bit, please?
Absolutely.
So at the start, obviously, you're withdrawing all your money from your freedom fund, so 100% of your expenses, and then the market crashes. Well, then if you've got the option to bring your DB pension forward, what that will do will cover some of your expenses and reduce the withdrawal rate on your freedom fund. So you're in the bridging period between when you've retired and your DB. You're probably drawing for more than 4% in this period on the bridge. We'll come on to bridges later. So we need, if we can reduce that withdrawal rate by bringing our DB pension forward, we've suddenly reduced our sequence risk impact by quite a large amount. And not only that, because we brought it forward and we've now got DB covering some of our pension, some of our expenses, if we are flexing as well, so if we could flex 10% before on our investments, now 10% of our expenses in flexing is 20% of our investment, of our flexing on investment. So between them, they're adding quite a lot to reduce our overall withdrawal rate, which reduces quite a lot the sequence of returns risk. And as we'll find out later on, sequence of return on a bridging fund is pretty horrible. So we'll come on to that later and see why you really want to do that if you can. As we say, it's an option. You don't actually have to bring it forward if you don't want to. There are some trade-offs that we'll talk about in a minute about DB pensions and why you might not want to bring them forward. But you've got the option potentially, if bad sequence risk happens to you and you go, oh my God, I'm withdrawing 16% on my bridge fund, that's not going to last, then you might want to bring your DB pension forward and cut off that down to 8% or less or whatever it is. So we'll bring that right back down so that we're not burning through our bridge fund too quickly.
So, John, when you talked about flexing, you meant that if you combine this strategy with flexing how much you're spending. So, if not all of your budget or the amount you're spending is on necessary stuff, some of it's on that discretionary stuff like holidays and eating out and so on. If you're able to combine this option of taking your DB pension early with being flexible on your spending, then it's got like a double whammy positive impact.
Yeah, it's almost a triple whammy on this one, I think. Yeah.
And then just to point out as well on this slide, this is just an example of, we said DB covers 50% of expenses and your freedom fund covering the other half. Like, obviously, it's going to vary depending on your circumstances.
Yes, because we have no idea what your circumstances are. So we've kind of made up examples for this. Okay, just a comment from YouTube before we move on to the next bit. SHR says, I understand the principle of sequence of returns risk, but can't get my head around why it's only short-term risk in the first few years of retirement. John, why is sequence of returns risk only a scary thing for the first 5 years?
So generally, it's only it's been 5 years on average. So what happens is that, if you can get through the first 5 years and your pot is not depleted significantly, then you're normally well on your way to growing your fund and getting out of there. I mean, we have had flat periods of the markets for 10 years in some periods, so that could be longer, but generally it's about 5 years in historically. And if you look at the models that people produce of where they're looking at the maximum impact of, if you're doing things like bonds or cash buffers and whatever, the maximum impact is the 5 years after retirement. That's when you really need it, because that's when it hits you the worst. Should the market crash quite a lot in those first few years, that's when you're really, really burning through your fund really quickly. And then it's really going to struggle to recover to any sort of decent level. So that's the danger zone of the first 5 years. It can be longer, but 5 years is usually the number we're thinking about as the danger zone. But you don't really need to think about the years. What you can do is monitor how much of your fund your expenses are. So you do 4%, you inflation adjust it every year. Your fund might well be growing greater than that. Over half the cases, it'll be growing faster than that. And that's fine. And you'll get to the region where it becomes 3.5% of your total fund or even 3%. Certainly, once you get below 3%, there's been no historical scenarios where 3% has failed ever. Out of 150 years, 3.5% is right up there with being on the very edge of probably it's a 50-year failure rate. So unless you're going to live for 50 years, another 50 years, then you probably don't worry about that either. So that's where we're looking at. So somewhere between 3.5%. You get under 3%, you're rock solid. 3.5%, you're probably pretty good anyway. So you can ease off the measures, but they still need to take them a little bit. Don't go wild, but keep it there. So keep it 3.5%, I would say.
We've got a little explanation later on about how if the market goes really well, why does that mean that your withdrawal rate goes down?
Yeah.
We'll come on to that. If you're a bit confused thinking, well, how is your withdrawal rate changing like that with what John's saying, then we've got an example that hopefully will clear that up.
Yes, please stick with us. We're going to explain this in multiple different ways and multiple different points to help with this. Which, whilst we talk about the DB pensions, we've got a little bit about should I take it early? Because there was kind of three scenarios: taking it early, taking it on time, and taking it late. Basically, if you take it earlier, it lowers the amount you need to bridge between different pots, which again we're going to explain in a bit, but bridging between retirement and getting to your SIP, and then your SIP and getting to your state pension. It reduces your sequence of returns risk, but it also reduces your fixed income, like the amount you get, because you take it earlier, you get a little bit less. Then we've got about taking it on time, where you've got the certainty of the income. This is the more balanced approach because you're getting the actual amount you were promised. You'll still might need a bridge to get to the state pension. And then tell us about the tax bit, John.
So just if your pension is close to a threshold or just over a threshold, so you're just into higher rate or you're just into basic rate with your DB, then if you take that earlier, you'll be pulling effectively money out of a tax rate into a lower tax rate or a zero tax rate. So that makes taking it earlier more of a no-brainer than not taking it earlier. So really, it's when you're just over a threshold that's more important. It probably doesn't make any difference if you're staying wholly within basic rate tax or you're staying wholly within higher rate tax. But if you've got the option to go between the two, that might help you.
I love it. And then the final one is sometimes people say, well, should I defer my pension? Should I defer my DB pension to take it later? Which the concept is you get a higher fixed income later. You get that certainty of income later, but you also have the risk of expiration before you get to really enjoy that much of it. Any thoughts on taking it later, John?
Only that some providers don't give you any increase in benefit by doing so. And some just don't allow it, or it'll be a less benefit by delaying it. So you need to do the maths. You definitely need to do the maths. And, my expiration date versus how much I'll get in the meantime versus the certainty that I need.
We are being a little bit euphemistic saying expiration. This is kind of a running joke that we had on Rebel Finance School, that we were talking about investing not until you retire, but until you expire. So when we're saying expire and expiration, we're talking about dying, for those of you that are not familiar with that in joke.
Which is also the hardest part of this whole thing, is no one knows when they're going to die. So you can't plan your money exactly. You have to have contingency in case you live a long time. Let's move on to number 2, which is kick the tax down the road. What does that mean, John?
So you can delay paying tax by using tax-free sources of income that you have. So what you're going to have to allow for the average tax that you're going to pay in your number, in your retirement expenses, in your drawdown number. So but we can delay that. We can delay that from paying it early on by using our tax-free sources that we have available. We won't end up paying any less tax. We just don't pay it for 5-10 years, hopefully. So we pay more tax later on, but hopefully then we've grown out of the sequence of returns risk danger zone, and we have an abundance, and we don't really care as much about the tax at that point. So it's just about moving the tax down the road a little bit. We're not avoiding it, we're delaying it by as many years as we possibly can so that we're withdrawing less in the early years. Again, it's about we're keeping the average withdrawal rate, but effectively we're pushing it down in the early years and then pushing it back up again later on.
Love it. So let's give a worked example.
Yeah, so imagine you're living or you want to spend 30k a year. Well, if you are paying tax, you've got the element that you can keep of the 30 grand and then a little bit thing you have to pay in tax. So you need to take out 32 and a bit grand to get that 30 grand after you've paid that tax. Whereas if you're not paying tax, well, how do you do that? Well, 12 and a half grand from the personal allowance, and then you can take the other 17 and a half of that 30 spending by doing a tax-free withdrawal. Well, you're taking out 30 and keeping 30. So there's just the little bit extra or a little bit less that you're taking out means that you're reducing your sequence of returns risk because you're taking out less in those earlier years to keep the same amount after tax.
And then the idea is you sort of are paying more tax later when your pot has had more time to grow and you abundantly have enough money to be able to pay for it. Awesome. Let's talk about free money in retirement. John, who's giving me free money? Is it you? Are you handing out checks?
Not yet. Not yet. Maybe when I have maybe another 20 years. Yeah, so you still have the option to contribute to your pension when you are retired. You are obviously limited if you don't have any employment earnings, but you still get tax relief on the basic contribution that you are allowed. So yeah, so you get £720 if you put in 2880. So the government give you for free £720. Isn't that very nice of them? Such a benevolent government.
Government.
Good old government. So you then end up with 3,600 in your pension. So the free money bit that John is talking about, if we actually broke that down, when you get that 3,600 out, if you withdraw it untaxed because you're using your lump sum allowance or you're in a lower rate, you actually get to keep all of it. If you withdraw it taxed, well, you do have to pay tax on it on the way out, but at the lower rate, that's only £540, which you've got this line here which shows what you've contributed. So on the left-hand side, if you manage to withdraw it untaxed, you're getting an entire free £720. And on the right side, if you're a lower rate taxpayer, you are still getting £180 free. So that's kind of like taking money out of your pension and then putting it back in. So you can kind of do that every single year and get free money from it. That's the idea, which who doesn't want free money throughout retirement up until age 75?
I like free money.
Me too. Okay, John, tell us why we have a very cute old couple on this slide.
Yeah, so throughout the slides, we actually mainly refer to income as if it was a single person. And so we just wanted to rebalance that, and we thought the best place to put it was here. So I'm not quite sure whether it's a sequence of returns risk mitigation, but if you are a couple, then you have less than double your income target. You don't have twice a single person's target. You're generally about 50% more. You also have double the allowances that a single person has, and you have double the ISA, LISA, pensions, and you have 2 state pensions as well. So all of those things means it's a little bit easier to retire if as a couple, as long as you stay a couple.
Yeah.
So if you want to search for a buddy in the Rebel Finance School group and find a little retirement buddy you can partner up with, or that will help.
When we're talking about less than double the income target, this is the idea that, if there's 2 of you, there's efficiencies, right? Like you don't both need to have accommodation. You can, share certain costs. So the cost for a couple is less than double the cost for a single person, generally speaking.
Yes. Just jumping back very slightly, there's a few people in the chat, John, going, isn't this pension recycling where you put the 2,800 in each year and get the free money? Isn't that pension recycling? And are we going to be told off for doing this?
No, it's too low for that amount.
Well, there you go. That was an easy question. I love it.
Angela says, when's Rebel Dating coming? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, Rebel Dating School is definitely on the way eventually. Side Hustler says, I might shack up with a mate. I love it. We've inspired a whole new range of sequence of returns risk mitigation things by shacking up. What was this slide, John? Why do we have two people screaming freedom with pineapples?
Well, that was just to show that as a couple, you get to freedom faster, and
they're excited about freedom.
They're excited about freedom, yes. And excited about the freedom and the opportunity to have, like we said, why are you missing out on an opportunity here to sell Rebel, financial dating service?
They don't need us. Just stick a pineapple in your basket when you're shopping and you'll be fine. Moving on quickly. There are obviously some additional...
This is a summary, so...
Yes.
So this little bit, we've been talking about some additional strategies that you can have to minimize your risk if you were to retire into the market going down. So we talked about the option to take your DB pension early, so that's covering some of your costs and not your freedom fund, which has gone down in that scenario with the market going down. The option to kick tax down the road. Well, not option, that's what you should do in general, right, John?
Sorry, I missed that bit. Sorry.
I was just saying, I said the option to kick tax down the road, but actually you probably should do that regardless, right?
Yes, yeah, I think you should do that regardless. I mean, not everybody has the opportunity. If they're a low income or there's two people, perhaps withdrawing 16 grand each, they might not have the opportunity to save any tax or something like that. But if you've got the opportunity, take it. Absolutely.
Awesome. And then the other one with free money in retirement, where you can put that just under 3 grand in and get 720 from the government.
So those are the 3 strategies that will help you move sequence of returns risk down. So we're going to move on from sequence of returns risk.
A few people saying, why would you be untaxed? I'm confused. We're going to come on to that and how that works. Like, how are you able to get this all out without paying tax? We've got a whole section on that, which you can see here. We're going to come on to the tax efficient withdrawals in a bit.
Exactly. And when we're sort of producing the workshop, it's really difficult because you kind of go, well, I want to teach you this, but I need to teach you this first. And then if we teach you that, we want to teach this. So there's no good orders. We have to start somewhere and slowly build it up, but it will all come, don't worry. Now we're going to move on to this bit, planning for retirement. This is apparently what I will look like on my 800th birthday, according to AI.
You're looking good.
I'm looking very good. I feel very happy with that. So here's the kind of chart. If a chance of a male age 66 living to different ages, and this is actually called longevity risk. So if you're 66, your average is you'll get to 85. But some people will die earlier and some people will die later.
And this is the government statistics. So the UK life expectancy covering, the whole of the UK.
And you have a 1 in 10 chance of making it to 96 years old, which that is what is called longevity risk. And your money has to protect you and look after you if you do happen to live a long and full life. And then we have a chart here for a female aged 66 years old. Very unfairly, they get slightly more years than the men, probably because they're healthier. And you've got a 1 in 10 chance of making it to 98 years old.
For people that are 66, and we've put 66 because that's the current state pension age. So you're just thinking, okay, I need this money to last me for the rest of my life. How long might I live for? So that's the purpose of showing you these charts. And you can have a play yourself based on your gender and your age. It will tell, this life expectancy calculator will tell you your chances of making it to different ages. It's just one of the tools to kind of figure out, how long might my retirement be? How long do I need to plan for?
Exactly. And then you kind of go, well, what if I do live a long time? Well, your money just has to last longer. And this is the whole conundrum of retirement planning, is we don't know how long we've got. And if you do last a long time, well, you need to keep a lot higher percentage of your freedom fund in equities, because that's what will grow over the long term to protect you against longevity risk. Anything to add against longevity risk, John?
Not only that, historically, you need a lower withdrawal rate, so you need to be more flexible and use all these tools to get into that point as quickly as possible. If you're planning to live for 50 years or more, be retiring very early,
Yes,
you just need to be more aware that you need to get in there faster.
exactly. Bill, the doctor on YouTube, says women need to plan more for longevity risk. Exactly. Like women have a higher percentage chance of living a lot longer than we do.
Why do
Moving
you
on.
look at me when you say when we do? I'm a woman.
No, I was looking at you going, you're going to way outlive me. I need to look after my health massively.
Look after your knees.
Okay, so that's longevity risk. Now we're going to move on to bridging. Now, this bit baked our noodle for a long time, and Katie spent at least a day on one slide. So we'll see how this goes.
So this is about taking free money as you are approaching retirement. Well, what does that mean? There are ways to get free money as well as in retirement that we just talked about, but on your way there with these different tax efficient accounts that we talked about in week 8 of the course. So you put £100 into your ISA. Well, the government doesn't give you anything. This is after tax money, but then it grows tax free. With a stocks and shares LISA, if you're young enough to take advantage of one of those, you put in £100. The government gives you £25
top
up, just puts it in the account for you. Well, the provider asks the government to do it for you. If you are putting money into a pension or a SIP and you're in the basic rate, meaning you earn between 0 and 50 grand, if you put in £100, you get 25 back from the government. If you do salary sacrifice through your employer, well, the government doesn't give you the money back, but you get a tax break on your income tax and NI. So it's like the equivalent of getting an extra 39 quid for the £100 that you're putting on. So that's salary sacrifice in the basic rate. So if you're earning up to 50 grand. Then if you're in the higher rate taxpayer, that same salary sacrifice idea, so you're not paying tax and NI on that £100 contribution, you're actually getting £72 tax break.
Which is huge.
This is free money, essentially. You're not paying income tax on these things. And in which case, that leads us nicely on to...
People go, yeah, but don't I just pay tax when I take it out? Like, this is all sounding great, but don't I just pay tax when I break it out? Chris says, what about the additional rate tax at 45%? Chris, there is that bit as well. There's so many different tax positions. We couldn't cover them all. We've covered the normal ones. And someone else said, yes, Scotland.
The more common ones.
The more common ones. Scotland has different tax thresholds.
That's true.
That is absolutely true. This is the UK ones. We need to apply it to the Scottish one, the English ones.
England and Wales and Northern Ireland?
Yes. So there's going to be a little bit of applying this to your own situation. So this yeah, but don't I just pay it back? Well,
if you're within the personal allowance, meaning we all get, well, that's not quite true. You get £12,500 tax-free. That's your personal allowance. I said, well, that's not quite true, because if you are one of those very high earners, you do get that removed, don't you? But in retirement, you're probably going to get your personal allowance.
Exactly.
You're going to get 12.5 grand tax without having to pay any tax on it. Well, if you're within that personal allowance, you get to keep all of it. So I'm just flicking between those two and showing you get to keep all that money. You don't have to pay tax as it comes out because you're within that 12.5 grand. If you're in the basic rate when you come to withdraw it, there is some tax you need to pay on some of these accounts. On an ISA, there's no tax to pay because you're taxed on, you contribute with money you've already paid tax on. Then when you come to withdraw it, you don't need to pay any tax. Same with a stocks and shares LISA. With a pension, with a SIP, there is tax to pay. So you pay a little bit of tax on that, and then there's tax on these others as well. So for that £100 that you've put in, so that's that dotted line, on each of these scenarios, you've put in £100. But you can see there's still headroom above each of these that you're still up. So yes, you're paying tax on the way out, but you're still better off. And this is, you might be thinking basic rate tax is not 15%. Well, you get from your pension, you get 25% tax free. So the basic rate is 15%, not 20%.
Exactly.
It's like 75% of 20%. There's a lot of percentages going on.
There is.
Here.
I can see Wes and Kim debating it right now, going, I don't know about these percentages.
What are they going on about?
What are they going on about it? Wes and Kim are my barometer of whether people are getting... Are you okay out there?
Yeah. Let's have a little check-in. Is everyone alive out there?
Yeah. Hit a heart on YouTube if you're alive, or put a comment in the chat, please. If you're in Zoom, okay. Side Hustler says, I'm not okay. JM's like, I'm broken.
Confused.
Yeah.
Alive, more or less.
More or less.
So people are alive. I think they're a little bit confused. And Dorothy's saying confusion is good though, right?
Confusion is on the way to doing it. Side Hustler's like, I'm not okay yet.
Loving the yet, Side Hustler.
Love the yet. Toulousa's sister says it's tough to get the last bit.
So the purpose of this slide is to show you when you contribute to your pensions, the government gives you free money or you get the tax break. And people say, but yeah, you're just going to pay that tax back when you withdraw it. Well, the purpose of this slide is to say, actually, you're still better off even after paying the tax, assuming that you're in the basic rate in retirement.
So you kind of look across this. When you're putting money into your account, you would look across this and go, which is the most tax efficient one? And if you were to put them in order, if you're a higher rate taxpayer on salary sacrifice, your SIP or your pension is the best one. The second best one is the LISA, the stocks and shares LISA. But most of us, including me, were too old to get one. Only young, attractive people like Katie get to have them. So annoying. And then you've got the third best one is the salary sacrifice at the basic rate. Like if you had a choice of where to put your money in, and then the fourth best one is the basic rate pension. And then in terms of getting free money, your ISA doesn't really get you free money, but it does grow tax-free, which is amazing. Okay. Manda says, everything in orange above the line is a bonus, yes?
Yes.
Exactly.
You get to keep that. So you've put in 100, the government's given you some stuff on some of these accounts, but then they take it back when you come to retire. But anything above that line is you've kept as the free money.
Exactly. Okay.
We've got Mark says, you've totally baffled me with all the percentages and I'm totally lost.
Mark, we might have to do this a few times. A few people are starting to get it now, the longer we've hovered over the slide and more we've chat about it. Stephen Michelle says this has been one of the greatest light bulbs moments on the course. Yeah, this took us a long time to get, but I think it is an amazing slide.
So look, if these percentages are confusing you and you're not sure, like, how have they come up with these numbers? The point is pensions have amazing tax benefits. Even though you pay tax on the way out, you're still better off, assuming you're in the basic rate when you come to live off it, which is 50 grand per person. And I think most people's retirement budget is within that.
Yes.
So that's the point of the whole of this, is saying pensions have these amazing tax benefits. Even though you do pay tax on the way out, you're better off because of those contributions you get on the way in.
Absolutely. Just going to reply to one comment on YouTube. Stevie says it's completely short-sighted because it doesn't include a business relief pension scheme. Stevie and everyone out there, we can't cover everything in a 90-minute session. We're doing the best we can to go slowly through the different items and help you as much as you can. And we've taken what is most people's situations. And some of you will be in different situations. Some of you will have different rates. Some of you will be in different places. But we're working really hard just to go through these step by step and to try and break it all down for you because it's a big subject. Before we go on to the next section, John, do you have anything you would like to say?
I guess just point out on the, you look at the SIP and the 6%, you think 6% is not a lot, is it? You think, well, wait a minute, 6% of my pot, that's probably a year less working I need to do before I can retire. So don't write off the 6% is what I'm saying on that, on the basic rate one. And
the 6% John's referring to is if you're in the basic rate, if you put £100 into your SIP or your pension, and then when you come to live off it, you get £106 out. So you get a free £6.
which that can be quite a lot on your entire pension pot. You get £6 free for every £100 you put in. That mounts up over time. Awesome. Okay. Everyone's okay?
I don't think that's true.
everyone's okay.
I don't think everyone's okay, Alan, but I think
just take a breath. We're going to keep going because we kind of have to. We can watch it as many times as we want. We will answer questions. We'll just keep going. We love you all. It's a complex subject. We're just working to do it. David White says it's £6.25 to be pedantic. Yes, we've rounded some of the numbers.
£6.25. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So pensions have amazing tax benefits. But what if you want to retire before you can get to them? So for a lot of people, I think I'm right in saying the current pension age is 57. What if you want to retire at 55, at 50, at 40, at some age before that? Well, this is what you need to have is a bridge. So we've talked about bridges a couple of times already. What does the bridge look like, Alan? What are we talking about?
A bridge looks like this. So let's say you want to retire at 54. We've just picked a random age, everyone. We have to pick an age. So let's say 54. Your SIP or your workplace pension, depending on how old you are, will come online somewhere between 55 to 58. And then your state pension will come online somewhere between 65 and 68, depending on your age. Now, the bridge bit is, if you retire before your SIP, you need money outside that SIP or workplace pension to last you until you get to the workplace pension. And then if you're retiring then, you need that SIP or workplace pension to last you all the way until you get your next tranche amount of money from your state pension.
And we've put a range of ages on here. You put SIP age 55 to 58, state pension 65 to 68, because it's different for all of us depending when you were born, and they're changing the ages and things. So we've just put a range. Yours will be whatever yours is, and there's the government site you can find that on.
Exactly. Now, the idea is you are going to be a financial engineer, and you are going to build a bridge between your SIP and your state pension age. You build bridges. You are now a bridge builder. Please repeat after me. I build financial bridges. I build financial bridges. Dorothy repeated it after me. At least one person did. That's good. Mike did not. We love Mike, even though he didn't say it. Okay. He's smiling though. Or you build that bridge between the ISA and your general account and your SIP. Those are the two bridges.
So you need this bridge because it's a balance between two things, A and B. A is taking that amazing free money that you can get by using pensions, and B, having enough outside pensions to be able to retire before you can get to them.
Exactly.
So then you're like, okay, what is the balance between the two, between the ISA and the pension? If you want to retire before you can get to your pensions, how on earth do I know what that split should be? What should I aim for?
Well, it depends how long it is until you can get to your SIP, and it's basically how many years until you can get to your pension. And it's all about the number of years. Okay. The bridge.
So this is how much do you need in your bridge, and it will be different depending on how long your bridge is. So if you don't have a bridge, if it's no years until your pension, you're planning to retire, your pension age is 57, you're retiring at 57, well, you don't need anything in your ISAs because you can get to your pensions now, and those pensions have great tax benefits.
So everything in your pension.
Everything in your pension. But then it will go less in your pension, more in your ISA as you have more years until you can get to your pension. So say your pension age is 57, you're currently 52, you'd like to retire at 52, well, you need 24% of your freedom fund in your ISA and the rest in your pension. And then it goes up from there. So 10 years is about 50-50, 15 years more in your ISA, and so on, 20 years, 25 years. And then when you get to 30 years out, actually all the money needs to be in your ISA. Should we call on John to explain this?
John, where did this maths come from, working out the different bridge amounts?
So it came from the 4% rule. So I looked at the 4% rule, which is, if you look at all the backtesting models, you can run your numbers through them. and you can go, right, so 30 years, I've got a 95% success rate. That's what you come out, roughly about 95%. So all I did was go through the backtesting tools and goes, right, how much do I need to bridge for 5 years with a 95% success rate, 10 years, 15, 20, 25. And I just went through all of those numbers, actually from all the way from 0 to 30 each year, and worked out how much you needed and saw what the percentage, what percentage you needed effectively of a full fund in your bridge fund. So that is telling you how much you have to have in the bridge, because you want as much as you possibly can in your pension. So you want as little as you possibly can in your bridge, but you want to be fairly safe with the bridge, because bridge funds are quite scary. When we come onto a field side later, you'll find out why. But yeah, so you want to have probably a 95% success rate on your bridge fund to get there.
Love it. And a few people are saying, what is a success rate? The answer is you're not going to run out of money. Success means not running out of money. Failure means you run out of money and you have to beg for pizza on the street corners.
Yeah, and this is rigidly following the 4% rule as well. Remember, this is taking exactly the same amount of money, inflation adjusted, every year for 30 years, 29 years, 28 years, 27 years. So it's following the same formula, exactly the same formula. So it's based on exactly the same maths of the 4% rule.
There's a lot of people say, well, I'm not planning on having anything left to give to anyone. I just want to enjoy my pot for myself. I don't have kids or anyone that I want to leave my money to. So they say, well, that means I can withdraw more, right? Well, the answer is no, this is to make sure that you don't run out of money. And of course, you can flex that as time goes on. And chances are you'll be financially massively abundant following this strategy. So then you can adapt as you go and spend more as you go.
Perfect. A few people asked to see the slide again. Well, here it is. Take a photo, or we actually have something fabulous to give you. Are you excited for something fabulous?
I mean, I am, Alan.
Steve nodded. I love it. Michelle's giving a round of applause. She doesn't even know what it is. Hold your enthusiasm a little bit. David and Gabby giving us thumbs up.
Enthusiasm. Carry on the enthusiasm.
We are very excited. It's not even a spreadsheet. It is a calculator. So this is a bridging calculator embedded into the website. All you do is put in your ages and it gives you the exact percentage for the number of years you've got to survive. Give that a round of applause. You don't even need to understand the maths. You could just... I'm applauding that calculator. It's genius, and it's all based on the incredible work that John Buston has done.
He's a legend.
He is an absolute legend. Give this man an Oscar, give him an Emmy, give him a Grammy. I don't know. He deserves some kind of award. He is incredible. So we have a bridging calculator. So this will help you to work out how much you need to get to your SIP, and then how much you need to get to your state pension. And we're going to give you examples so that you can understand the maths, but the calculator just makes life so much easier.
And on that slide, we showed you, what if you've got 0 years to retire to get to your pensions, 5, 10, 15, you've only got 5-year increments. And what you're like, well, what if mine's 2 years or 7 or 18? Well, that bridging calculator's got all of them. We didn't want to put all of those different scenarios on the slide.
Exactly. So let's do an actual example now. So here's the example we're going to do. Your desired retirement age is 50. And you're going to get your SIP or your workplace pension at 57. So you need to build a 7-year bridge to get between the two. How do we work this out, Katie?
Well, let's say that you want to spend 30 grand in retirement. How much do you need in your freedom fund?
This is the interactive part of the course, FYI. If you need 30 grand, how much do you need in your freedom fund to give you 30 grand for the rest of your life? What do you think? And we'll do other examples. Oh, I love it. You guys are nailing it. 750 is coming in super quick. Bill, 10 points for you. JM, Susie B, love it.
Yeah, 25 times 30 says...
DP, Matt Hampson got it. Yeah.
Amazing. So you need 25 times that in your freedom fund based on the 4% rule. Well, how does that work? How is that the same as the 4% rule? Well, 4% of 750 is 30. It's just this other way round the circle.
Exactly. So let's bring this to life with a little diagram that took us a long time to create.
Yes, so your freedom fund's 750 and you want to retire in 7 years' time. Well, the beautiful work that John did says that your ISA needs to be 34% of your pot and the pension was 66%. That's the split that you need between the two elements. Okay, so then we just need to apply that to your 750 grand freedom fund. So 34% of 750 is 255. So you need 255 in your ISA and the rest in your pension, which gives the 750. Now, we do need to adjust the pension a little bit for tax. So it's maybe a bit more like 550, which means your freedom fund actually is 805. More on tax later. That's just a very quick acknowledgement that there is some tax that you're going to need to pay when you take your pensions out.
Exactly. Now, how strong is your bridge? If you're walking over a rope bridge with holes in between the slats, you're going to be really nervous if a financial storm comes along. So actually, we want to build strong bridges to get you across, because the financial storm could wreck your bridge, and we don't want that. We want you to have enough money for pizza. So
And the Lego City.
And the Lego City. Will your bridge endure? Let's have a little look at a worked example. Let's say you've got your pension and you've got your ISA. And we're just using $1 million because it's easy maths. We're not saying you have to have it. It's just because it's easy to do the maths with that. Now, if you withdraw 4% from that whole pot, that gives you 40 grand a year to live on. That's the kind of maths that it works. If you can't access your pension for some time and you want to retire, well, you still need to take the whole 40 grand out of your ISA, which means you've got an 8% withdrawal rate from your ISA. And if you're taking that much out of your ISA, it's going down faster. And will it last to when you can get your SIP? Does that make sense to everyone? Are you with me? A few people are nodding. Excellent. Dorothy, give me a thumbs up. Julie, I'm a little bit worried about you. Are you okay, Julie? She smiled at least. She's alive.
Are they talking to me? Is there another Julie?
I know. Okay, a few people again. Yeah, cool. Now, here's the bit about market returns. You retire with your 500 grand in your ISA. And this is just a mythical example. We're just using it for the maths.
For the explanation.
For the explanation. So you retire there. You've got your pot. If you want to live off 40 grand a year, you're taking out 8% of that money. If the market crashes, which does happen sometimes, and it goes down.
Is this a stock market prediction, Alan? Are you saying it's going down 50% in the next 2 years?
No.
Okay, good to know. Just checking.
There are no predictions here. You know I don't have a crystal ball.
This is an example. It may or may not happen.
Exactly. Then you kind of got this bit of you still needing to live off 40 grand a year at this point. But now, if you're taking 40 grand a year out and your pot's gone half, you're actually you're taking 16% of your ISA. And that would drain your ISA really, really fast. And that's the danger of bridging. So when we talk about will my bridge endure, we've created a visual of what just happened on the last slide. Your pension still exists because you haven't touched it, but your ISA has halved in value because the market has gone down. Now, it always recovers, but it's gone down at that point. And then you go, well, okay, I still need to live off it. So you want to withdraw your 40 grand a year, but now you're withdrawing your 40 grand a year just from that tiny pot that's left. And that is the risk of running out of money. And that is why you want to build a really strong bridge to get to your next pot.
Which I think the point here is we're saying that the percentage you need in your ISA seems larger than it should be, but it's to withstand these things happening.
Exactly. Now, more likely what is going to happen is you retire needing 40 grand a year, which is 8% of your ISA, and it probably will just go up. That's what normally happens is over time the stock market grows, and then by the time it's grown, you're actually taking a smaller percentage of your ISA by the end of it. That's the more likely situation. but all of the work we do is to protect you from the very small chance that you retire at exactly the wrong point.
I think we should skip this next example.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah. So let's do what's that thing? Proof of life check. Are you okay out there? What have you got from this section, or what have you got so far from tonight? Are you alive? Fiona's all good.
How often does sequence of returns risk happen, says KP. John, do you have any thoughts on how often does sequence of returns risk happen?
Really bad ones, probably once every 40 years or so, but I mean, they still happen. I mean, we had that 10-year of zero growth in the noughties, and we had, I think 1966 was another terrible year for starting your pension drawdown. So, and we had the dot-com crash, another big one. So there's all sorts of times it's happened where it's gone down a lot, and you have to certainly watch it. But there'll be a lot of near misses as well. So you'll be in a downturn and you won't know how bad it's going to get. So you still have to take the precautionary measures, but you don't know, and you may not have needed to afterwards, but you don't know until afterwards. So it only 5% would have run out, but probably 25% have been, oh my God, this is terrible, I might run out. So you've got to be still taking those measures. You don't know which one you're in. That's the problem you have. So yeah, they're probably every 20 years, 40 years are the really bad ones, but there'll be lots of little ones in between, potentially, where you might think you're going to run out and you don't.
Yes, love that. A few people in the comment have chatted, like, did it say recording has stopped? I think that was someone's AI recording the meeting and transcribing it.
Yeah.
We're still on YouTube. Everything's good. We're still alive. You're still alive. People have replied, which we love. So now we're going to do a second example. If you don't get this second example, we're just going to have to watch it a few times to get it. But we want to do it because I really do think if we do repeated examples, it'll start to make sense. So we're going to go for it because we think it's important to do, or at least I do.
Let's do it. Buckle in.
Buckle in, everyone. Buckle in. Right. Enough about these youngsters, Katie.
Enough of the youngsters who want to retire at 50. What if I plan to retire at DC pension age, SIP pension age, workplace pension age, which currently is 57, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So this example that we're doing is we're saying, okay, what if you're 57 now, or you want to retire at 57 when you can get to your pensions, and you want to build a bridge until you can get to your state pension at age 67. So let's say that you want to spend 30 grand a year. Should I ask people what they would need in their freedom fund again?
They did this perfectly last time. So they know it's 750 in their freedom fund. We've kept that the same to make it easy. Or is it?
Or do you need 750? Well, let's have a look. So you want to spend 30 grand a year. We can split that between 18 grand and 12 grand of spending. Why? Well, from age 67 onwards, assuming you have the full state pension, that 12 grand is covered by the state pension. Now, your freedom fund still needs to cover the 18 grand because you're getting 12 grand from the government, from your state pension, but you still got 18 grand that you need to cover from your freedom fund. And on the bridge to get there for age 57 to 67, well, your freedom fund needs to cover all of that. So let's look at these by groups. So we're going to look first at this 18 grand spending. So we're just breaking it down to figure out how much we need. So how much do you need in your freedom fund to cover that 18 grand spending until you expire?
No one knew they were doing a maths test tonight. Did you expect a maths test tonight?
We should put the maths and spreadsheets and numbers workshop that I did in the chat.
Yes, we should, definitely. We did a maths workshop, but maths will really help you. Bill got 450, Jacob got 450, a few people, I love that. It is indeed, Paul Reynolds got it on YouTube, it is indeed 450 is the fund that you need for that portion.
So that little bit there, you need 450 grand to cover because you're responsible for covering that 18 grand of spending from 57 for the rest of your life. Okay, now let's look at that 12 grand portion. So how much do you need to cover 12 grand of spending until you die? Expire sounds better.
Expire
doesn't it?
sounds
It's
way
like
better.
I'm past my sell by date, or like, yeah.
Mike says 120.
Oh, not quite.
Gary says 300.
Gary's right. So we're just doing the times 25. So 12 grand of spending, using the 4% rule, you need 300 grand in your freedom fund. But this is where it gets spicy, because you don't actually need all of that, because that part that's covered by the state pension from age 67, that's not my problem.
It's Rachel Reeves's problem. It's not your problem.
I don't need to cover that, but I do need to cover myself to get there, to get to that point. That is my problem. But how big does that need to be? Like, do I need that full 300 grand, or how does it work? Well, this sounds like a bridging problem to me, Alan.
It is a 10-year bridging problem. So we need to work out a 10-year bridging. So we had, how much is that? We had this chart which showed like ISA and general account to pension. Luckily, it is exactly the same for pension to state pension. So it's exactly the same numbers for pension to state pension. So a 10-year bridge is right there in the middle. So you need a 10-year bridge.
Yep. So let's apply that to this 12 grand of spending that you need to cover. So we saw there that you need 48% in your DC pension, 52 is covered by your state pension. So all I'm doing now is applying that to that 300 grand that we need to cover the 12 grand of spending. So that's 144 in your DC pension and 156 in your state pension, but actually not really. So that adds up to 300 grand. So you need 144 in your freedom fund, but then the other bit, not my problem, mate. I don't need to cover that. I'm just covering the 144. So if we go back to looking at how this all pulls together, so we got 450 to cover that 18 grand. For the 12 grand, well, when I'm 67 onwards, not my problem, but I need to cover that here. That's the 144 that we just worked out.
So that's kind of how you apply the bridge to work out the differences. And how does this like actually pull together? If you didn't allow for the state pension, well, you would have to cover the whole 750 to give you the 30 grand a year. But if you allow for the state pension, well, it kind of builds up where you've got your freedom fund to cover the whole period. You've got your freedom fund to cover the bridging part. And then you don't need this element because it's all covered by the state pension. So your target is only 594, not the full 750. So what does that actually mean? Well, it gives you a freedom fund target that's lower. So the state pension, you've got money coming in. You don't need as big a target. So you could retire 2, 3, 4+ years earlier, which is just crazy.
To which people say, well, are you implying that I could have saved and invested 156 grand in those few years? That's not possible. Well, by that point, compounding, look at that chat. Compounding's doing the heavy lifting for you. So it's, why are you having a sigh? You don't like that picture. So you're not, it's not like you would have had to save that amount in those years. It's by that point your pot's growing and that compounding is doing the work for you.
Exactly.
So then we've done that bridging example to get from ISA to pension, and then we did a different example to get from pension to state pension. And you're thinking, well, if I wanted to retire at 50, how on earth do I do a double bridge? That sounds complicated.
It is.
Well, that's why we have the bridge.
That's why we have the calculator, so you don't have to do that maths. Like the double bridge stuff bakes my noodle as well. But yeah, that's why we have the calculator. Craig Jackson says on YouTube, well, I've just done the maths. I think I can retire. I didn't include the state pension originally. Give Craig a round of applause for doing the maths. That's the whole point of the maths, is to help you work out what you need and when you need it. A few people said, like, shouldn't the bridge be 120 grand, not 144, I think we had in the...
Oh, so people are saying, well, if you're covering 10 years spending of 12 grand, why do I not just need 120 in my bridge? Why is that, John?
Well, if you could do a cash bridge, if you do a cash bridge and just about keep up with inflation, you could do that, but that would mean you had zero cash at the end, and you would need to make sure you had 100% of what you needed in the next fund. Generally, though, with an invested fund, you only run out in 5% of scenarios, and in the other 95%, you still have a load of money left, or well, a load of money left in half the scenarios, and still some left in most of the scenarios. And so, obviously, you're trading away certainty now for having invested less in your pension. So you'd have to invest more in your pension if you did cash now, to get to a higher number in your pension. So it's a trade-off. You'd have to put more in your pension if you had just a straight cash buffer to go straight down to zero in your bridge. So it's about having an invested pot. Invested pot is more efficient to get you there with less money overall than having a cash buffer and a separate pension fund.
Yeah. I think it's important to note as well that, we've assumed full state pension here. Depending on how many years of qualifying you have, your state pension might be different from the full 12 grand.
Yes. Yeah, so do just check that. There is a government calculator, a pension forecaster that will tell you what age you'll be when you get it and how much you'll get and whether you have any gaps and all of that stuff. Exactly.
So I think let's just do a little summary, which is going to pull together all of this. So even if you got completely bamboozled by all the numbers and you didn't get it and you're like, where are these percentages coming from? This is a lot. This is what we want you to get from this section. Pensions are extremely tax efficient. They are great. The government gives you free money. They want you to invest for your retirement. They want you to be able to look after yourself. But you might need an ISA or a GIA bridge to get there, a general account to get there. The other really cool thing is that the state pension can reduce your freedom fund target and get you to retirement quicker. And we have the bridging calculator that you can have a play with. Try it with the different ages that you might want to retire. Maybe you can already retire like Craig. Just have a play, figure it out and see what impact it could have on reducing your freedom fund if you allow for the state pension. If you don't want to allow for the state pension, you can see the impact of that by just putting zero in the state pension amount.
And we know people will be going, my situation is complicated. I'm a couple, I have DB pensions, and there are so many more complications. To which we say, we have a resource to help you, even if you're complicated. And John has created a super duper spreadsheet that you can use to input all of your different situations into if you have a very complicated one that the calculator doesn't do.
Because you're thinking if you're a couple and you're different ages, one person can get to their state pension before the other, different pension access ages. And that's kind of the complications that we're talking about.
Exactly, which bakes everyone's noodle. But this will help. This will help. So scan the link. You'll find it in the chat. The Rebel Ninjas put it in the chat, which is amazing.
And it's
Thank you, Mark.
in the YouTube description if you're on catch up and on the YouTube chat if you're here live.
Yes, YouTubers. All links that we've talked about tonight are in the description. So please find them there and have a look for them there. Excellent. And we also have a second resource. Next Monday, Katie is doing a wizardry spreadsheet session where we will help you create your own spreadsheet to model this out for your exact personal situation. So we got you. We know it's complex and we're just going to work through it all slowly over time. So we've got you. It's going to be okay. Yeah, we love you. It's going to be okay. Is it going to be okay for me?
Well, I do feel a lot of pressure that you said, like, Katie's doing this session. I was hoping you might help.
I will help. I love it. And please mark Rebel Ninja. No one has noticed there is 12 weeks in the 11-week course, the 10-week course. So please don't tell anyone. Don't give that away. No one's noticed. Right. So we've done a bit on bridging. We know it's intense. You're doing amazingly well. Let's just keep going for now. Tax efficient withdrawals. We need to talk about tax.
Yeah, because people are like, Donegans, what about tax? The retirement calculator we did in week 9, whichever week we did, whenever we did it, that didn't allow for tax. You Donegans never allow for tax. Surely I need a bigger freedom fund because I'm going to be paying tax when I take my pensions out.
To which we say, well, let's have a look at tax. And we have
John.
the fabulous John to help us talk through the tax section with us on standby.
Let me just find the section.
Perfect. It's slide 102, John.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're starting off with before pension access. So anytime under age 55, 56, 57, whichever one you're at the moment. So, or even 40 or 30, whatever it happens to be, then you only have access to your ISA and your taxable account in general. So you can do ISA withdrawals, you can do taxable account withdrawals, and you will also get your taxable account spitting out dividends at you every quarter or yearly, depending on which ones you have. Now, they're generally about 1.5% at the moment on global funds, so they'll be quite small. But if we're talking about a 30k income, we're thinking about a pot over probably a bit over 750k to allow for some tax. So half of that in GIAs, that's spitting out about £5,000 a year in dividends. And say we're taking half out of our ISA and the rest out of our GIA withdrawals. So normally, if you're paying gains tax, then it's 18%. However, that would require that 100% of your withdrawals were gains, which is not very likely. It's more likely it's somewhere in the 25 to 75% range, and probably more at the lower end than that, especially if you've downsized or got an inheritance or something. It's only if you've been investing for a long time you're going to be paying more than 10% tax by having a lot of gains accumulated in your GIA. So I say typically you've got your £3,000 allowance, which is a lot less than the Americans have, and you've got and then you've got your you've got to work out what percentage of the pot is gains to work out what your tax would be. As I say, you'd need over half your pot to be gains to be paying more than 10%. So typically you're in the 0 to 10% range, somewhere in there, depending on how new your GIA is.
Yeah.
And then dividends, you normally pay 8.5% tax, but you've got a £500 allowance, and you've also got your personal allowance, which you're probably not using. You're not using your £12,500 of personal allowance because you're not working, you're retired. So therefore you've got £13,000 of tax-free allowance to use on your dividends. And that would require something like 800, 900 grand in a GIA to get that to that level of dividends. And, if there's two of you, that would be a really, really big GIA. So I have to put two of those to get to that level. So yeah, that's a big number. So generally you're paying 0 on your dividends, you're paying 0 on your ISA withdrawals, and you're paying somewhere between 0 and 10% on your GIAs. So overall, that's a very low tax percentage on your total income. I think the slide says that, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. So if you wanted to get 30 grand out or actually live off 30 grand, you'd have to take 31 out. So actually your tax rate at that point is only 3% to live off 30 grand. So there are some ways to get money out in a very tax efficient manner.
And that this is an example, it might be a different split between the where you're getting that money from, but just to show you that actually, whilst the headline tax rate for the gains is 18% and the dividend tax 8.75%, what we've shown you here, your overall tax rate is way less than that.
Exactly. So let's move on to the second one, John, bridging between pension access and state pension for a single person.
Yeah, so as we said before, we want to try and defer tax in this situation. So as soon as you get pension access, we're going to try and kick tax down the road as far as we possibly can. So we're going to take £12,500 out of our taxable part of our pension. But because that's under our £12,500 personal allowance, we actually pay no tax. So effectively, we're taking money that would be taxed in the future if we didn't take it, tax-free now. So we want to do that as much as we can to pull money out of our pension so that we reduce our overall tax burden long term. And then we want to take the other part from a tax-free source. So that might be from your tax-free part, the tax-free lump sum, the 25% tax-free you can take from your pension, which you can take any amount from your DC pension. You don't have to take all of it. So you just take £17,500, or you probably take 20,000 and stick it in your ISA and use 17.5 to live on, that sort of thing. Or if you've got an ISA remaining or any GIAs remaining, then you take your tax-free out of there as well. So you got those two options. Take it out of some tax-free source so we don't pay tax for as long as we possibly can. And you probably can do that. For most people, you could probably do it for 5 to 10 years before you run out of tax-free sources. So depending on how big your ISA was going into there, and if you had any big GIAs, and how big your pension is. So it all depends on all those different factors, which historically will be accidental probably for most people. But yeah, so if you can take as much as you possibly can tax-free for as long as you can, you're reducing your overall withdrawal rate in the early years where it's critical, where sequence risk can bite you the hardest. That's what it's about.
Which is kind of crazy that you can take out so much tax-free for the first 5 to 10 years. And when you're thinking about that's a real bonus to having your money working for you and living without paying too much tax. Michael in the chat says, mine lasted 12 years, which is amazing. So it's amazing how this like lump sum allowance can last over time.
Coming on to more about how that all works,
Yes,
aren't we?
if you don't spend it, yeah.
So tell us about after state pension age, John.
So when you get to state pension age, there's two possibilities here, really. So you've got your state pension, which is covering 12 grand of your income. So you only need to find 18 grand. So if you've still got any tax-free lump sum left, then effectively you'll be doing a pension withdrawal on 18 grand, which is almost all of that is taxable. And therefore, as we said before, 25% tax-free, 75% taxable. You're paying about 15% tax on the pension withdrawal, but overall it's a bit less than that. So it comes down to about 9% overall on the pension withdrawal. Later on, when you run out of tax-free lump sum, then obviously it'll go up to 20% on the pension withdrawals. So we're slowly staggering our tax upwards. So we're going from zero tax for as long as we possibly can. Then we'll be on 15% tax potentially, and then 20% tax later on. So we're just slowly ramping up as our pot grows and we get out of the danger zone.
And the reason for doing that is you need, if you're trying to live off a set amount, if you're paying tax on that, you need to withdraw a little bit more to pay the tax to then have what you need to keep to live off. So you're saying if you kick that down the road, then you don't need to withdraw as much in those sort of earlier years where you've got the sequence of returns risk.
Yeah, and you need to have included the average tax in your withdrawal rate in your number. So you needed to have included that anyway. So you are withdrawing less than you've set aside each year for the first few years. So, we've got we've got kicking tax down the road. We've got, all those other measures that we can take to reduce that initial withdrawal rate, even though you live in the same lifestyle. You live in the same lifestyle, but you're withdrawing less from your pot in the early years.
Love it. Thank you, John. So let's look at your principles for drawdown before we go into an extremely exciting part, which is the flowcharts.
Flowcharts, yay!
Favorite slide. Love this picture of you, John. Right. Tell us the principles of drawdown, John.
Yes. So just a second. So this is what I've come to sort of condense it all down to. So I've been creating flowcharts for a few years now, and I've sort of condensed it down to what principles do we need to follow, and what principles that everybody needs to follow, really. So we're looking at, we want something that's efficient. Obviously, if it doesn't work, it's not really any use to us. We're looking at something that's easy to use, because if it's complicated, we'll just wing it, because people in the FIRE community quite often wing lots of things that they shouldn't, as we find out when we talk to them. We want to have something that addresses the things we've talked about earlier. So reduce our sequence risk by reducing early withdrawals, or by flexing, whichever one we are doing, depending on how bad it is. We want to keep taking free money for as long as we can. And we want to make use of our tax efficient wrappers. So get things out of those horrible GIAs and into ISAs, or get things out of pension that will be taxed in the future, get them into ISAs. All of those things we're looking at. And the reason for doing this and having a process is because you're probably only going to look at this once a year. And I know whenever I look at something once a year, I go, why on earth did I do that last year? What am I doing? And you have to learn it all over again. So having something written down and a process will give you a baseline to get back up to speed really quickly. Because I find, not having it written down, not having something, and you're scratching your head, and you might make mistakes, and you don't want to do that because that costs money.
So the fabulous John has created for us a set of flowcharts. We're just going to very quickly show you two, And then we're going to tell you to study them at home. Because
Read and work.
John has actually created one for each tax situation you might be in. Because this one won't cover everyone's situations, but it will cover some of them. So let's imagine a basic flowchart. Every year you bring up your flowchart and you start at this point. And then you go, are my funds down? Is my freedom fund up or down? And if it is down, then you go to what's my sequence of returns risk strategies? Am I going to reduce my spending? Am I going to withdraw from my cash buffer? Am I going to make some money?
And actually, we're talking about funds being significantly down, which will come on to, you need a rule or like a guideline for what that means and when you would do this, which we'll come on to afterwards. But it's not just, if it's down like...
No, it's not like a mini drop. When you see the article, it's like markets have plunged down 1%. No, that's not it. This is like if it's a significant drop, we're talking an '08 or a .com crash, not just a little thing. Okay, right. Then you go, okay, if I need more money, I need to take it from my taxable accounts up to my allowances. And if my funds aren't down, I skip all the sequence of return strategies and just take it straight out of my taxable accounts.
Because remember, this is before you can get to your pensions, right? So the only options we've got here are ISA and general account.
Exactly. And then you kind of go along and go, well, if I need more after my taxable account, I'll get it from my ISA. And from my taxable account, I might want to think in doing bed and ISA, so I can get it out of the general account and put it into an ISA to protect it. And then if my funds are over target, then I can do the free money thing and top up ISAs, SIPs, and other things.
The other thing being the state pension. So if you've retired super early and you don't have all your, what's it called, the stamps, to make sure you've got enough years of contributions to your state pension, and you might think, well, do I use some excess funds to top that up to make sure I get more state pension when I get to qualify it?
Exactly.
Qualify for it.
So how do you know if your funds are down? This is what AI thinks Katie looks like when she's examining her funds to work out whether they're up or down at the end of the year. What I want you to remember is this is an art and a science. There are a bunch of really, really complex strategies to work this out. We wanted to go for one that was quite simple. Are your expenses more than 6% of your total pot? So is your overall withdrawal rate more than 6%? If so, that means your funds are probably down. And then slight caveat, has that happened last year and this year? So like
if you had it down, multiple years in a row.
Multiple years down, then like make it 5% of your total pot. So your expenses are 5% of your total pot. Bill is pointing out some of the guidelines and different strategies. We're already an hour and a half into this session, so we can't cover them all today, but we're doing our best and we're going for as much as we can.
Can we quit out? Just want to ask John something that people are asking in the chat. They're saying, is this why is it once a year? Should we not be doing this every quarter or month? And should we be doing it at the beginning of the tax year? Or is this just to set the strategy for the year, John? Why does it say each year?
Well, the each year is implying how much you can withdraw in a tax year because of the tax limits. That's why it says each year. That's the only reason it says that. So yeah, you can have a look at this as often as you want. Most people would have a look when the situation changes, I suspect. The market goes down or they come to the next tax year is usually when you look at these things, I find. I don't look at my funds that often. I only look at them when I need to do something or when something horrible happens. So that's the only time I look.
So this is just for the planning and saying, okay, got the year coming up, I've got my allowances to use, what am I going to do? And kind of the strategy rather than, we're not saying you need to go and look at this every time you want to withdraw some money to live off.
No, you probably set it once a year, and then if something goes wrong or something changes, then you go and have a look. And if you need to tweak anything, I think that's how I do it anyway. So I just look every I probably look 3 or 4 times a year when I do something with my GIA. That's when I do something. That's it.
Love it. Love it. Marlo on YouTube says, OMG, this flowchart is the stuff of dreams, John. The stuff of dreams. So you're making a lot of people very happy with the flowcharts. We're going to give you one more quick flowchart example. So the quick flowchart example, let's say you are in your basic tax rate and you've got access to your pension. And it kind of all the flowcharts start the same each year with, are your funds down?
Meaning is the market down, isn't it?
Yeah, is the market down? If it's down, you reduce your spending, withdraw from the cash buffer, make some money, or one of your other sequence of return strategies. And then if you need more money than that, then John has created the order with which you do it. So the simple order is, first off, withdraw from your pension below your personal allowance. And you would skip straight to this stage if your funds aren't down, because you don't need to do any of the sequence of returns risk stuff. Once you've done that, do you need more money? If yes, get it from your tax-free lump sum up to the income requirement.
Up to how much you need to live on.
Exactly. If you even need more money because you're having a spendy year, you withdraw from your ISAs up to your income requirement.
Up to how much you need, yeah.
If you even need more money, you withdraw from the taxable portion of your pension. But hopefully you've not gone through all these steps. You've satisfied your spendy nature with the first few of these steps. And then it has a little bit that adds in at the back, which is you take some of that money to top up your SIP to get your free money every year. So every year you take £2,880 more than you need and then shove it straight back into your SIP to get your free cash.
And maybe get your state pension stamp if you don't have your full, is it 30 years?
Yes.
35.
Yeah. 35, thanks, John.
35, they must have increased it without me looking.
And John, tell us about this PCLS thing.
So the PCLS is just the proper name for the tax-free lump sum. For some reason, it's called a pension commencement lump sum, even though you don't have to take it all at pension commencement. So it's always been a bit of a misnomer for DC pensions, at least. Yeah, so you want to take out. Oh, I think we had a section on this later, actually, don't we? As we moved
maybe we'll just cover it later when we've got it in the slides. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a section later, I'm sure. Well, there was.
There is.
Still be there.
It should still be there. But okay, so on the flowcharts, we wanted to say this is what you need to take home and do it. And John, the incredible John, has created a flowchart for everyone. So you get a flowchart, you get a flowchart, you all get a flowchart, scan the code, takes you to the thing, and there is a flowchart for every single position. Katie's putting it in the chat now, and you can use the flowchart for you, whether you're a basic rate taxpayer or a higher rate taxpayer, whether you're pre-pension, post-pension, all of the different portions are in there. So please give John a huge round of applause, because he demystified it for himself and then he shared it.
Well, he shared it in all different scenarios that aren't relevant to him as well. He's done so much work to figure this all out, work out the efficiencies, what the optimal strategies are. The amount of work John's put into this is amazing. Judith says, is there a flowchart for the flowchart to help me decide which flowchart to go? So there's, in each of the flowcharts, it has a bit at the top, doesn't it, that says, is this which tax bracket you're in?
Yes.
Whether you can get to your pension yet or not, and state pension. And then as well, you've done a bit of work on the change to the inheritance tax.
That's not in that particular set of flowcharts. There's another one somewhere.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've done some post 2027 inheritance tax flowcharts as well for those that are interested in that side of things.
I love that.
I've had them on the back burner, but I've been a bit busy. So
someone's been keeping you busy, John.
I thought you were retired, John.
Yeah, only for the last couple of weeks. I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago on inheritance tax, and I've got all the stuff. I just need to finish it off and post it. So
awesome.
You're getting a lot of love in the chat for the work that you've done to help everyone. So
Yeah, there is a huge amount of love. And what is incredible about what John has done is he's figured this out and then just given it away to other people. And that is part of this like community, how people help each other. It is phenomenal. So we're going to keep moving because there's a couple more bits we want to do, which is how do you actually get money out of your DC pension or your workplace pension? How do you actually get money out of your SIP? John told me this was too much for tonight. I told him, you are smart people and we'll be okay. We'll find out what happens. It might be too much and you might all want to just kill us. Who knows?
Maybe that went dark. Now we know our expiry date.
Well, we had our first death threat on YouTube in 2022. It was all a bit dark and weird, and thankfully one of the ninjas removed it. So we'll just keep moving and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Right. How do you get money out of your SIP? John has blessed me with the opportunity to do this because basically, like, I spent a long time trying to figure it out this week with the amazing John's help. And now there are two methods to get money out of your pension. Method one is called the Uncrystallized Fund Pension Lump Sum, or UF+. Like, that's a really sexy title, UF+. It's a bit like Vaftgag, but yeah, you can have your money with UF+. The second way of doing it is called Flexi Access Drawdown, or FAD. So you can have your UF+ or your FAD. You get to choose. What the heck is UF+ or FAD? Mike, are you okay? I could see you adjusting your glasses. I was worried I'd lost you. No, thumbs up. Good, good.
Still there.
Okay, UF+. This is the bit I'm going to try and explain this with a hotel analogy.
I love this.
Imagine you go to a hotel and you book a night. Okay, and it's kind of like booking as you go, and you book your night, and you can choose whether you're booking annually, quarterly, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
And buy it whenever I want.
Buy it whenever you want. And every time you book your hotel night, you get your free breakfast, which is your 25% tax-free every time. And then you pay tax on the rest, like so your night stay. And there is HMRC admin every time you do it. So basically, it's like going to the place, booking a night, 25% tax-free, and 75% you get back. That's analogy one.
And is a faff, right? This HMRC admin is a bit of a pain.
Yes, because you have to tell them all the other ones you've done because they don't want you overtaking your 25% tax-free. Now, let's look at FAD. I want you to think of FAD as booking an entire week somewhere. So you book an entire week, you kind of set it up once, you book the entire week, and you get a great big tax-free lump sum at the start, which is like a giant hamper when you arrive at your destination. But you have ongoing taxable income. So every time you go to the buffet, they will tax you on it. And it's basically you're getting like the regular income, like the buffet every day. It's flexible after setup, and there's no additional HMRC admin when you do it. So there's my hotel analogy. And if that has failed, we're now going to use diagrams.
Yay.
So here's some diagrams. This is your pension pot. And under UF+, you crystallize a portion of it, and you get out 75% taxable and 25% tax-free. So every time you take a chunk of your pension, you get a quarter tax-free and 3/4 taxable. That's it. And then maybe you do it next year and you do exactly the same thing. You crystallize the next portion and you get it in those quarter, 3/4 proportions.
And it could be different sizes, right? Like you've got this shown as the same, but one year I could do a smaller amount, one year I could do a bigger amount.
Yeah, you could take 30 grand this year, you could take 40 grand next year, different bits. And then you do it again the next year or the next quarter, however the time frame is, and you get it in those portions. That is UF+. How are you doing on UF+? Please give me some kind of comment, nod, wave, heart, like something else. Okay, UF+ is basically taking it out in those proportions every single time. Kate says, seems like hard work. Yes, it is. Fiona says, very clear, excellent. Roseanne's fine, love it. There's a few hearts on YouTube, which makes sense. Cool. Okay, so this is it. Western Molad says, why would you use Off Plus? Good point, because you might want to actually use FAD. So here is FAD. FAD, you take out a big chunk, you crystallize a big chunk of your pension, you get a quarter of it tax-free, and the remainder, 75%, goes into a special pot called a flexible access drawdown pension. The tax-free amount, you just get it, so it comes to you. And then the stuff in your flexible access drawdown pension pot remains invested. So it's still invested in funds, it's still growing for you. And then you can do really nice stuff of setting yourself up a monthly income that comes out of it. So you could actually then take your taxable bit. This is all taxable, but you can actually set it up with the pension providers that they'll give you like a monthly salary from it or a basic income. And then year 2, you just keep going from your flexible access drawdown pot and you'd have like your monthly income coming through. But it's all taxable because you've taken out the tax-free sum up front. But this is how you automate a monthly income. So in Off Plus, you get chunks. In flexible access drawdown, you can automate a monthly income. Both have exactly the same tax perks. They're just at different points. Okay, that's a lot.
And my FAD thing, I don't have, it's not like all of it that I'm doing that with. I can do like a bit of it.
Yes. Okay, are you okay out there? Tell me, have you got the difference between those two? Judith says, is it taxable even under tax-free allowances? Judith, you get the tax-free allowance up until your lump sum allowance, and then everything's taxable after that.
I think Judith might mean the personal allowance there.
Okay.
In which case, you don't pay tax. If you're under the 12.5 grand a year, then you wouldn't pay tax on that. It's like taxable in the sense that like liable to income tax. Is that right, John?
Yeah, liable to income tax, but it's under your personal allowance, so it's 0 rated.
2 thumbs fresh for that.
And 12 cheesy then.
I am cheesy. Parky Park says, can I set up monthly income from uncrystallized funds?
Well, that would be an Off Plus, wouldn't it? So that's regular Off Pluses. If you can find a pension provider that does it other than the dreaded one, then yes.
Love it.
That's the only one we know who does it. Who can actually set up schedule ones. So
yeah, the only one that will schedule regular Off Plus ones is St James's Place. So you can pay your 4% fees and you can have that as a service if you would like to. But we go, boo.
The excessive fees in other areas do not make up for that slight convenience factor.
Exactly. Right, we're going to keep moving a little bit. We're going to talk about the lump sum allowance. This is kind of like relatively new, but basically you have a lifetime tax-free capped amount, which is currently capped at £268,275, or a quarter of your pension.
Yeah, and across all pensions, right? This is not per pension, unfortunately.
Yeah, none of you dodgy people trying to take it per pension. No, it's across all pensions. Off Plus basically uses it each time, and FAD gives you like the big chunk and then puts the rest in the pot. That's basically it. So what do most people do with their lump sum allowance? Well, they take it immediately. That's what your average person does. They pay off their mortgage, or they like spend it on an extension or a car, and they blow the whole money. But should you take all your lump sum allowance in one go? No, do not do that. It is daft. Like, what would you do with it anyway? If you took the whole 278 grand out, what would you do with it? Are you going to put it back in a general account? Like, that's stupid. Are you going to spend it all? No, don't do that. You've got to live off it. The only caveat would be if you're retiring and you've got high interest rate debt, then you might actually take some out to pay that off. But in general, you want to leave it invested. And this is the most gigantic version of the marshmallow test ever. The marshmallow test is, I'm going to put a marshmallow out there, and if you eat it, you get the one marshmallow. But if you don't eat it, it'll grow into unlimited marshmallows. And guess what the UK population does? They eat the marshmallow straight away, all of them, and then they don't have anything left. Like, please don't do that. This is the whole delayed gratification test. Don't eat all your pension pot as soon as you get it. Like, it should last all the time. Okay. Now, on this tax-free lump sum, let's break some myths. You do not have to take it all at one go. You can take it over the first however many years. Simple. You take it over your first 5 to 10 years to avoid tax. So you take your lump sum allowance, and that means you don't pay tax until later on. That's the bit about protecting yourself from sequence of returns risk. And then it also can help you avoid inheritance tax. John, could you tell us about the bit about like avoiding inheritance tax with this lump sum bit?
Well, it's more that it avoids the income tax on the withdrawal from pensions after you've expired. So before, we didn't have inheritance tax on pensions. From 2027, we do. And we have inheritance tax. And then the people who take out the money out of the pension also pay income tax on the money they take out of the pension. And that includes anything that's left in your pension when you die. So if you've left some tax-free lump sum in there, well, tough. It's now taxable, income taxable when the people draw it out. So 40% inheritance tax, and then 20% or 40% income tax when they draw it out. So yeah, that's a lot of money. So you can avoid that extra bit of the 20% or the 40% income tax after 2027 and after age 75. Then you can, if you take it out before you're age 75, basically. So it's worth thinking about for the future when, you know, pensions come inside inheritance tax. It's not so important for the next 18 months, but it will be after that.
Awesome. Love it. I think,
and I guess, I don't know if we mentioned it, but there's also a lump sum allowance protection here as well. Because if you've got a pension that's likely to be over perhaps $500,000 by the time you get into retirement, then it's probably going to grow over $1 million by the time you've finished, as it were, you expire, and therefore you will use up all of your lump sum allowance. So getting it out before it crosses that point saves you tax on the stuff that would grow above the lifetime allowance. Because obviously you could put 20 grand in your pension in your ISA every year, and that grows 10%. You've got 21 grand in your ISA. Or it grows if you've got 20 grand up to the lump sum allowance, and you're up to the lump sum allowance in your pension, and that grows by £1,000. Well, you're going to pay 20 or 40% tax on that when you take it out. So it's only worth 20,600, 20,800, not 21,000. So you want to get that in your ISA before age 75 is the new thing. The new thing from 2027. It's not so important now because you're not paying inheritance tax, so you're half and half. But yeah, after 2027 it is.
Awesome. And then I think we'll go to that one.
So then, we talked a lot about which platform you should use in the UK. In week 8, we talked about which are the good platforms. How does this work when we're coming to draw down? How do we know what is a good one?
What platform do they offer? And there's a few things to consider. Does the platform offer FAD? Does it offer Off Plus? And does it charge for them? Because some platforms actually charge for this stuff. Vanguard doesn't have any fees and offers both, but some of them do. Do they make you take your whole tax-free lump sum in one go, which is not good? We want a platform that does not force you to do that. There's this thing called beneficiary drawdown, which John will tell us more about in a second, but do they do that? Are they part of the direct payment scheme for inheritance tax? And can you automate withdrawals? Are the main questions around that. John, could you tell us a little bit about the beneficiary drawdown and the inheritance tax bit and those pieces?
So that's what I was just talking about was the when you come to expire and you leave your pension to somebody else, then they can take it out bit by bit if the platform allows beneficiary drawdown. So they can take out 20 grand this year, 20 grand next year, and stay within their basic rate band. If they don't offer beneficiary drawdown, what that normally means is they give it to your beneficiary as a big lump sum. So if you die after age 75, that's taxable. And guess what? A few £100,000, most of that will be at 45% tax after taking 40% inheritance tax. Yeah, not fun. So make sure, certainly when you get to the time you come into retirement, when you're more likely to expire, that you've got a platform that offers beneficiary drawdown. Because if it doesn't, it probably pays it out as a lump sum, and that's not good. So you don't want that. And the second one was a direct payment scheme for inheritance tax. Obviously, if you've got a big pension after 2027, or even a moderate pension that's now inside your estate, you're probably over the limit. You're probably paying inheritance tax. And your executors have to find that before they get access to your accounts. So how did they do that? So they have to take a loan out or something. But some providers offer direct payment. So go with those. Some of them are actually doing a government direct payment scheme. They'll talk to your executors. They won't give them any money, but they will give the government money from them accounts if your executors tell them to. So, because that's all recoverable and it's all traceable and everything. So yeah, that's a very useful thing for avoiding having to find a bridging loan or taking installments and all that sort of stuff. So if they can take it out of your ISAs and your GIAs directly.
Awesome. A few people said, do Vanguard do this stuff? From my research today, Vanguard seems to be a fantastic platform that sorts out a lot of this for you. And I looked into the automating of the drawdown, and they seem to do a great job with that stuff. Obviously, I am not in drawdown, so I have not personally experienced that. But they seem to do a great job. A couple of people said, what about II? You've heard a few bits about Interactive Investor, have you, John?
Yeah, I had heard that, you have to sell to cash before you can take it out. So you can't really take withdrawals because you have to sell to cash first. So you have to manually sell to cash. And there's also a bit of a question at the moment on the group where somebody was suggesting that they don't offer the direct payment scheme, for instance, which is, would be a blocker for me as well. So I think you need to check all these things out. So we're currently looking at things like that. I'm not with Interactive Investor, so it doesn't really concern me directly. I know HL have these things, and I know Vanguard have these things, so I'm quite comfortable with those. But it did actually cause me to move one platform when I found out they didn't have one of these things. So yeah, I've already done this not because of the fees or the funds, but because they didn't allow beneficiary drawdown. Yeah.
And very usefully, Andy in the chat said Interactive Investor do offer the direct payment scheme. So that
cool. So that's now come proven now. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for telling us that. That is super useful to know, which is excellent. Okay, we are going to move on because we are heading into the last tiny bit. You have all done so well getting this far through the workshop. So please give yourself a pat on the back for surviving so far. Even if you don't understand it yet, you've survived, which is just amazing. We love you.
You haven't expired.
You haven't expired during the workshop, which would be terrible. Okay.
So bringing this all together then, how do you actually build your plan given the information that we've set out or the starts of the information for you? So some tips. Principles, some tips as to how you go about this.
Number one, you just have to take your first best guess. Like you just have to take in as much as you can, take your first best guess. And
it's an iterative process. So you're not going to come up with a clear answer all in one go. You're going to take bits here, bits there, and it's almost like doing a jigsaw and pulling all those pieces together and actually thinking about this.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
You're in the chair, John, because they've gone dark.
I can't present it. So which slide are we on here? We're on building a plan. I'll give them a few seconds to come back. Do they know they're gone though? That's the question, I guess.
Possibly not, possibly not. So I would say, does anybody have a question that they would like to ask John quickly? If you want to pop it into the chat. I think there are a few questions in the Q&A actually, John.
Okay,
So,
I'll have a look in the Q&A.
but here's a question for you. For your fad, how do you decide the size of the big chunk? 1, 2, or 3 years worth?
It's up to you. I sort of think you should probably start thinking about pulling it out every year now, with the with the upcoming changes to inheritance tax and that sort of thing. So I would plan to pull it out 20 grand a year into your ISA plus whatever else you need. So that sort of thing I would look at now. So I would do a yearly one.
Yeah, and that's because after 2027 that you're not going to get that inheritance tax shelter from having it in
That's
a
right.
SIPP,
Yes.
are you?
Yeah. That's my thinking is that, yeah, you're losing the inheritance tax shelter, so you're gaining a 40% tax. So I'm not going to take the 40% and the 20%. That's a bit horrible. So I'm going to get that out. But yeah, a lot of people are worried about the lump sum allowance anyway, that's going to get reduced or whatever. So people pull that out generally. So pulling it out at a sensible speed into your ISA isn't a bad thing. Get it in there. It makes no difference whether it's in it now. It makes no difference whether it's in your pension or your ISA. So get it in your ISA because the less chance of fiddling
is tax free. Yeah. And I mean, I suppose as time goes by and you are getting closer to your expiry date as such, does it make sense to take advantage of, I believe you can do a regular payment to somebody, and as long as you make it a regular payment and it doesn't affect your standard of living, it still falls outside of inheritance tax.
Yeah, you have to have income to cover it. That's the challenge when you're retired. You have to have what's classed as real income. So that's
they don't allow your pension income to be.
Yeah, so pension income counts. So you could actually ramp your pension up to be the full basic rate. So effectively that'd be about 43 grand after tax. So if you get 43 grand from your pension, you might get some dividends from your GIAs. That counts as income. If you had BTL income, that would count. But selling capital from your accounts does not count. So that's no use to you. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So you can't just sell units. That's no good. You can only take pension income, or you can, have dividends. That's about your lot, really. So you're probably going to get about 43, 45 grand a year, effectively, that of income that you've got after tax. So as long as you're spending less than that, you can gift the difference, and that's straight out of your estate, as long as you do it every year.
Fabulous.
If there's two of you, of course, that's like 80, 90 grand, so that's a lot.
Great. Yeah. I believe we have Alan and Katie back again.
Oh, cool.
Well, hey.
We're live.
The Wi-Fi in Brazil failed us. Please give a round of applause to Dom for stepping in when the Donegans went dark. Thank you, Dom, for stepping in. Thank you, John, for holding the fort and keeping everyone together. We love it. We were just doing a little bit of a close on the plan, so I think we'll just go back to this a little bit because we wanted to sort of set you away with a little bit of homework because we're coming up towards the end of the workshop. Which you're probably all going, thank you, Alan. I'm glad it's the end of the workshop. We've had to think a lot today. Right, so your first best guess, it's an iterative process. You'll keep refining it over the years because the market grows and it goes up and down, and you'll actually want to refine it, which is why you refer to the flow chart every year you go through it. And there is also a changing tax landscape. What does that mean? The government keeps changing the rules, and we can't know them all now. We just have to keep learning about it each couple of years. So just keep on refining. So we'll come up with a rough plan, keep refining, and keep going forwards. Now, before we deliver the freedom work and the closing bit, John, out of everything we've done today, if there were 3 things you wanted people to leave with, what would you tell them? These are the 3 things you need to go away with.
I did write them down before. Now I can't remember.
Slide 131, John.
Oh, I was just trying to work out where it was. Yeah, okay. I thought it had gone. I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. Yeah, so the main 3 things I was thinking about earlier was, what are your sequence risk mitigation strategies you're going to use? So not just flexing, but a whole host of them. because flexing on its own, you might end up doing that for years and years and years. You don't want to be doing that. You want to have a whole arsenal of sequence risk mitigation strategies so that you don't have to be flexing down for such a long period of time, because that'd be horrible. Also have a plan, like we said. So look at the flow charts. They might not match exactly what you are. Just pick out the bits that work for you, the bits that you need, and put them into your plan. And then you've got something written down and you won't forget. And you can refine it later on. You come back to the flow charts. I'll probably update them as the tax rules change, or somebody will do it. So decide on your strategy and carry on. And keep taking the free money. I mean, always take the free money. It always amazes me. You can get that £720 or £180 of free money, and you log on to Vanguard, 15 minutes later, you're done. So £180 for 15 minutes work. Yes, please. So that's how I see it. So I'll do that every year as well. So those are the three main things. Just keep doing the things we've talked about. The main three things: mitigate sequence risk, have a plan, have some sort of plan of a range of things you're going to do. Have your drawdown plan as well, have it written down, have some sort of flow chart or something that you can follow, and keep taking that free money because it makes you feel good.
If nothing else.
Free money always makes you feel good. I absolutely love it. So this is what we've done so far tonight. We've looked at retirement spending, 4% rule, sequence of returns risk, planning for longevity risk, bridging, tax efficient withdrawals, how to get money out of your DC pensions, and building a plan. Has anyone else felt like it's a lot tonight? We had no idea how long this workshop would last. We were just like, let's try and teach everything in one go. Maybe we'll turn this into a 10-week course next year, but we've tried our hardest. Your freedom homework. Number 1, estimate the spending you want to make in retirement. Number 2, review how much free money you're getting right now. Are you using that free money? Number 3, review the drawdown flowcharts for your situation. Everyone's got a flowchart. Number 4,
look at the balance that you've got between your pension and your ISA, particularly if you're planning on retiring before you can get to your pensions.
And number 5, play with the bridging calculator, because that will help make a lot of this clearer. Now, we did want to say, John's work and contribution to the FIRE community has been incredible. He's built spreadsheets and guides, tax-efficient spending, retirement age planners, drawdown flow charts, inheritance tax flow charts, and so much more. He's done an incredible job. John hangs out in the Rebel Finance School Facebook group and is one of the main people in the FIRE HQ, UK FIRE HQ Facebook group. And John, tell us, you wrote this bit about you sort of post in the FIRE Optimizers group and then share it at Rebel Finance School afterwards. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so generally, I was in that group before I was in Rebel Finance, and that was, I became an admin of that group as well. But I was, so that group is more about people who are sort of further down the path normally. So we do have beginners as well, but generally there's a lot more people who have been on the FIRE path for a long time. So we get very strong opinions, and people will pull things apart very quickly if you put it in front of them. So I generally post my my new stuff there, and then they'll very quickly find if there's anything that can be torn apart. They will find it, and then I can go away and make it a bit better. And then I'll post. Generally, I used to post it to other finance groups, but generally now I post it to Rebel Finance Group once it's got the bugs out, because there are a lot of beginners in Rebel Finance Group, and I don't want to give them something that's a bit buggy, because then they won't like it and they'll get confused. So generally they get version 2 or version 1.1 or something, rather than the original version.
Thank you.
A couple of Rebel Ninjas are admins in that group as well. So
yeah. And they are fabulous. KP says, the tax father, bringing us all the advice we cannot refuse, which I think is so true. You cannot refuse the advice. John had some extra resources to tell us about the back testing ones, John.
Yeah, so these are generally the only backtesting tools we have really are, unfortunately, they're all based on US data. So they're all based on US historical, effectively S&P 500 and US bonds, US Treasury bonds. But they are quite good. So they give you a very good general idea of what the path will be like. Generally, the UK seems to have been a bit insulated from the worst of the US markets because effectively the dollar has been growing against the pound for so long that we've actually been we've benefited on that side of things for quite a long time. And if you look at like we have about 40 years worth of data for the MCSI world market in GBP, and if you look at that, we haven't actually failed below 4.3% at all in the last 40 years. Well, just under 40 years. But yeah, these are the tools that'll give you the 150 years of US data, so you can go and play with those to your heart's desire. And I recommend that you do play with a backtesting tool of some kind before you retire, so that you have a real good feel for what sequence risk really is and how much these things wiggle about, because they can go all over the place and be horrible. You need to be ready for it. So it's another form of volatility training. So Andy Farrell, we got all the UK planning tools. So Andy Farrell has written the fireplanner.uk, which is a sort of another sort of bridging, and it's more of an average level bridging tool. So average in the sense it uses average market returns rather than worst market returns. So it doesn't do the backtesting breaking, but it does give you what it will normally be like for you. And then there's my retirement age planner, which was a spreadsheet I wrote about a year or so ago now. I can't remember. It's probably 18 months ago now, which does all this bridging for you. So it works out the bridges for ISA to pension, pension to state pension, state to multiple DB pensions. And it also does tax as well. So it does tax as long as you're not above higher rate. So as long as it's less than £100,000 of pension withdrawals, we're fine. So it does all that as well. So it tries its best to come to a number on those as well. So that's but it is a spreadsheet, so it's obviously a little bit trickier to use than using on a website calculator. I would also recommend James Shack's spreadsheet, which sort of does the same thing as well. So he's a financial planner who does a YouTube channel. He has a spreadsheet that does a very similar thing, in a completely different way. So I think you need to do 2 or 3 different tools. Don't ever use just one tool. Use at least 3 different tools, or use at least 3 different tools until you find a common answer as well. Because if one's way out, you need to find out which one's out, and not just use that one. GUID, I found, is quite good as well. So it's actually a commercial project, but it is free. So you can, but only for a single person. Again, so you can put in all your details and it'll stress test it with UK data. Although you don't get access to the UK data, so you don't know how accurate it is. And I did find some weird things with it, but it just does seem quite good. And of course, we've got our Facebook group with lots of resources in the file section from lots of people, including me and Andy and other people, and Mike as well, because Mike's done that, the MCSI drawdown flow spreadsheet, which shows you the last 37 years of MCSI in pounds and with UK inflation. And there's an accumulation version as well. So they're quite good for going through and seeing what really happened in the UK. Unfortunately, it's only 40 years. It doesn't cover the really bad years like 1966 and stuff like that, but it does cover quite a lot of the horrible bits. Covers the noughties, the dot-com crash and the global financial crisis and all that stuff. And we come out smiling, so that's good. So yeah, but there's loads and loads of files that people have produced that are useful. And I have probably a few more on UK Fire HQ as well that I haven't yet ported across.
Thank you, John. You are a legend, and it's lovely to see so many resources being built for everyone. It makes a huge difference. Now, there is more coming from us. We've done the drawdown session. You've survived. It'll be available on YouTube. We can watch it as many times as we want to, and there'll be a ton of questions in the Facebook group after tonight. Thursday, we have a very special session with Bob Haynes, which is all about an investor policy statement, rebalancing and living off your portfolio in retirement.
You'll leave that session with your own investor policy statement, so come along to that.
It's going to be really good. And then Monday, we have the financial financial forecasting workshop where we help you to design your own spreadsheet to model out your financial future.
Then we are going to do a wrap-up Q&A session for the Rebel Finance School 2025. So come along to that to get all your questions answered. Well, as many as we can. I'm not promising to answer all of them.
As many as we can. And then we have what do you do after money's been sorted? We have Doc G coming on to talk to us about purpose, which we are super excited about. And then the final bonus one, don't ask us anything about finance, but you can ask us anything else at all. And we're going to answer all your questions about anything about being nomadic, life, travel, whatever it is, retirement, all those things. We're going to have a lot of fun. If you're watching this on catch up, well, if you're watching this, you can come live. That's the events page under come live. So you can find all of those upcoming events. And if you're watching on catch up, they will be all in the playlist, which is on the right. So that is all of those elements. So there you go. We've made it to the end of the evening. And wow, Rebels, what a session. Drawdown Demystified. Kind of. Yeah, John's leaning back. He's not holding his horses. I think he's just passed out. At least, hopefully, Drawdown is a little less mystifying than when we started. And it is a process. It is a process.
Yeah, so if your brain feels like it's been through a spin cycle, that's okay. That's how we felt a lot pulling this stuff together. Like, this stuff is complex. Just remember what we said at the start, that clarity lies on the other side of confusion. And you would have come along, possibly a lot of you, not knowing what you didn't know, and now you know what you don't know. So that's the first step in learning, isn't it? And now you've got to come to grips with this new world. So you're never going to get it in one go.
And you've worked so hard to build your freedom fund, your pensions, your ISAs, your investments, decades of hard work, saving and planning. The least we can do is invest a few hours a year to make sure that money is used in the smartest, most efficient ways in Drawdown.
Because that's the fun part. This is where you turn all those numbers on the screen and then the different pots into the freedom, security, and life that you've been dreaming about.
So what's next? Well, take what you've learned tonight, start sketching out your plan, watch the replay twice, write it down, draw diagrams, scribble on the back of an envelope. You just have to start.
And remember, you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to get it moving, because progress beats perfection
every time. And thank you for showing up. Thank you for investing in yourself. Thank you for being part of the Rebel community. You've got this.
And massive, massive, massive thank you to John Buston for guiding us through all this, for his calming voice, for his exceptional amounts of research he's done into this, for people, for all sorts of scenarios and circumstances, which obviously only one scenario applies to John in his personal life, but he's thought about this deeply for all of us, regardless of tax rate and DB pensions and DC pensions and all that stuff. So John, we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was good.
Words are not good enough. He's amazing. Yeah. So please show your appreciation to John, and thank you for coming and hanging out with us. You are all amazing. YouTubers, we have absolutely loved hanging out with you. Sorry we disappeared for a bit in the middle. Jane says, thank you all, plus John. Second, Jane says, brilliant session. Paul's here, Julian's here. Like, you made it to the end of a 2-hour, 18-minute session on Drawdown strategy. If you've made it this far, please hit like on YouTube. Please leave us a comment. It has been the most unbelievable session. Richard says it's been so long. Katie's hair's dried already. Yes, I think I aged slightly during that session. I think I'm at least 49 now. What an incredible day. Thank you all for coming. YouTubers, good night. We love you. Thank you for coming. You are amazing. I'm going to end the stream now.
Bye-bye, YouTube.
You are incredible. Thank you for coming. Goodbye, Elizabeth, Simon, Spoonsby, Gemma, Western Molad. You are amazing. Thank you for your comment in the feedback form, Western Molad. That made our day. Justine and everyone. Good night, YouTube. I've hit end stream. Okay, you are now free to sway.